Tamela Mann has always had one of those voices that feels like home. You know, the kind deep, rich, and warm. The kind of voice that reaches into your heart and holds you together when you're falling apart. For years, her songs weren't just music. They were comfort. They were the background to hospital visits, late-night tears, and moments when people didn't know if they could keep going. Songs like Take Me to the King, God Provides, and Change Me became more than just tracks. They became personal soundtracks of survival. Tamela had always seemed like a pillar, strong, uncheckable, and full of grace. But then, one quiet Sunday evening, she sat in front of her phone and went live. There was no glamour, no makeup, no perfect lighting. Just Tamela in a hoodie, looking drained and worn down. Her eyes were swollen like she'd been crying for days. Her face carried the weight of something that had been pressing down for far too long. Then, with a shaky breath, she began to speak. "I'm tired," she said softly. But this wasn't the kind of tired a nap could fix. It was the kind of fatigue that lives deep in your bones, the kind that makes you question how long you can keep pushing. She paused for a second, her lips trembling. Then she said something that shocked everyone. "I've been pretending too long." With those four words, everything shifted. Tamela shared that she'd been battling an autoimmune condition. She didn't say exactly what it was, maybe because she's still coming to terms with it herself. But her symptoms were serious: constant swelling, aching muscles, long nights without sleep, and mornings where she wasn't sure if she'd even be able to walk or sing. There were days she'd open her eyes and wonder, will I make it through? Today, that hit hard, not just because it was Tamela Mann, but because she had always been the one carrying others. She was the voice of strength, the voice people turned to in pain. And now, here she was, barely holding on, asking for something she hardly ever asked for: prayer. Even more painful was knowing she hadn't just discovered this. She had been living with it for years. The signs were there. Fans thought she was just worn out from touring or performing, but behind the scenes, her knees were in constant agony. Her joints would lock up during shows. She smiled through it all, but her body was screaming. In 2019, she had both knees replaced. People thought she was finally on the mend. She looked slimmer, seemed more active, and had that glow again. But the truth was far different. The flare-ups didn't stop. The fear didn't fade. She worried every day about losing her voice, her gift, her calling. She'd lie awake at night asking herself, if I can't sing anymore, what do I have left? Still, Tamela kept showing up. She continued singing at services, comforting others at funerals, and visiting churches across the country, all while crying behind closed doors, breaking down alone in hotel bathrooms, and hiding the worst parts of her struggle. That's what people do when they're used to being the strong one. They carry the load, even when their own strength is gone. She said she didn't speak up sooner because she didn't want anyone to worry. She thought if she just kept smiling, no one would know. But eventually, the pressure cracked her. And when she finally let it out, it wasn't just pain pouring out, it was honesty. It was a message to others that said, it's okay to not be okay. That live video didn't feel like a performance. It felt like release. And people felt it immediately. But before we talk about the world's response, let's sit with that moment. The woman who helped millions feel whole admitted she was hurting, and somehow, that made her even more powerful. The next morning, her husband, David Mann, came forward too. Normally, David is the funny one, the one who keeps the mood light. But this time, there were no jokes, just a man in a plain black shirt, with tired eyes and a heart that had carried more than most could handle. "Y'all saw Tam last night," he began, his voice quiet. "Now it's my turn." His voice cracked as he spoke. Not as an entertainer, but as a man who had watched someone he loved suffer in silence. He told stories no one had heard before, how he'd help her out of bed after concerts, rub her legs through the night to ease the pain, or lift her from the tub when her body couldn't move. "She says she's fine," he said, but I've seen her at her worst. His words weren't rehearsed. They were raw, real. At one point, he had to stop and look away, just to gather himself. She's always been the strong one, he whispered. But now I've got to be that for her. He talked about the nights when she clutched her Bible, whispering prayers that barely sounded like words. He would sit there, not knowing what to say. What do you say when the one who gives strength to the world doesn't have any left for herself? She asked me, what if I can't sing anymore? David said, and I told her, baby, singing is just one part of you. You are the ministry, you are the gift. People didn't expect to see David like that. Usually, he was the comic relief, the balance to Tamela's powerful presence. But this wasn't about roles or appearances. This was love in real time. This was a husband showing the world what real support looks like, and people felt that. Thousands flooded the comments, saying, "This is what love looks like." Others thanked David for standing beside her, for protecting her peace, for simply being present. Black men in particular spoke up, grateful to see a man be both strong and vulnerable. David's 6-minute video felt like a sermon on its own. The impact didn't stop there. Famous gospel artists quickly began to share their own tributes. Yolanda Adams, Erica Campbell, Smokey Norfolk, and many others posted messages of support. They didn't just say kind words, they shared how deeply Tamela had changed their lives. Tasha Cobbs Leonard tearfully shared, "When I was broken, her voice kept me breathing." Kirk Franklin posted an old video of them backstage with a caption that read, "You've given us hope. Now let us cover you in love." Even celebrities outside of gospel circles spoke up. Tyler Perry, a longtime friend of Tamela and David, recorded a video where he said, "You were there for me before the fame, before the films. Now it's our turn. Rest, heal, we've got you." And then, something beautiful happened. Fans, choirs, and entire communities began organizing prayer gatherings. Hashtags like #pray for TAMELA and #covering TAMELA took over social media. But this wasn't about trends. It was real. People were stepping up for her the way she had stepped up for them. In one touching clip, a group of girls stood outside a hospital singing "Take Me to the King," their voices blending perfectly. Their signs read, "We love you, Tam." In another, a congregation stopped their service just to pray for her. No announcements, no offering, just pure love. But the most emotional moment came unexpectedly. During a live stream of the Mann family sharing dinner, something special was planned. The stream was relaxed Tamela, David, and relatives chatting and laughing. But then, David looked off camera and gave a small nod. Suddenly, the screen behind them came alive. Tamela looked confused at first. Then a video began to play. A young woman appeared on the screen, lying in a hospital bed with tubes in her arms. Her voice cracked as she said, "Miss Tamela, during chemo, I couldn't move. But your songs gave me a reason to fight. God provides reminded me to hold on." Then, a middle-aged man spoke. "I lost my wife," he said, "and then I lost myself. But one day, I heard your song on the radio. I pulled over and sobbed. That song saved me." More videos followed. A grieving mother, a recovering addict, a veteran with emotional scars. All of them said the same thing. Tamela's voice had carried them when nothing else could. She sat in silence. Her lips quivered. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Her hands trembled. David reached over and held her hand. He didn't say a word. Then, one final clip played. It was Tyler Perry again, but this time without any big production. Just him, sitting in a simple room. "You were there when all I had was faith," he said. "You didn't ask for anything. You just sang. You just healed. Now it's our turn." The room was still when it ended. Tamela whispered, "I don't deserve all this, but I receive it. Thank you." That night marked something bigger than a moment. It was a turning point. Tamela wasn't just a gospel star anymore. She became a symbol of honesty. Her courage to share gave others permission to open up too. Stop pretending. To ask for help. To admit that even the strongest break sometimes. Soon after, Take Me to the King climbed the charts again 12 years after it first came out. But this time, it wasn't about radio play. It was about understanding. People listened to her music with fresh ears, knowing now what was behind that voice. Churches held special services in her honor. Groups prayed through the night. On TikTok, creators made touching videos using her lyrics. And then, one more unforgettable event took place. Over 60 gospel artists joined together online in an event called Covering Tamela. Each one prayed, sang, or shared how she had touched their lives. Some broke down in tears and couldn't finish. The live stream ended with all of them joining together in a massive virtual choir. They sang a mix of her most loved songs. Voices from all over the world came together not for fame, not for applause but for love. And somewhere at home, wrapped in a blanket, Tamela Mann watched. Not as a performer, not as a celebrity, but as a woman being lifted by the same love. She had spent a lifetime giving. She was seen. She was held. And finally, she began to heal.